From the Homestead Studios in Santa Clarita, California, it's Just the Tip-Sters with Melissa Morgan.
Live long and prosper.
If you've got a tip for Melissa, a haunted memory you need to get out in the open, a phone number you remember from a long time ago that you're afraid to call, the reason canned corned beef tastes so much better than real corned beef, tell us about it by calling the Tipster hotline at 832-TIPSTER. That's 832-847-7837, or send an email to jttipsters@gmail.com. You just might hear your tip on the podcast. And now here's your host, patiently monitoring the internet for new clues and new virtual coupons from Ulta Beauty, Melissa Morgan.
More cowbell. Look, my internet history is none of your fucking business.
Oh, but it's definitely Ulta Beauty's business.
Well, yeah, and it's, I guess, part of your business because, you know, your wallet takes a hit.
Well,
so, yeah.
There's that.
There's that.
But, you know, what's
Everything's
mine
on
is
sale.
yours. What's mine is yours, darling.
Yeah, that's what the state of California says, as you remind me.
It is true.
Quite often that when I'm like, but it's your money.
But it's really like, Ulta Beauty's money in the long run. At the end of the day.
All of your money is Ulta Beauty money.
And Bed Bath & Beyond.
Stop it. It's not that bad.
Occasionally Target.
Occasionally
and
Target.
Amazon.
Yeah, and Amazon. Stop it. So the reason.
Victoria's Secret.
And Victoria's Secret and Uggs and Louis Vuitton and Coach. So now can we just stop?
Yes.
Okay, good. So the reason I said live long and prosper is not just because I was being a smartass, but because it actually portends to this week's episode, because the perp, I can never think of a better word other than monster, but the perp monster was a big Star Trek fan. So we're going to get into that.
Oh, this is going to be good.
Yeah, you're going to love it. I kind of hope you'll discuss your Star Trek history. But anyway, it's
You make it sound like I've had some sort of illicit affair with Star Trek. Let's talk about your history with Star Trek, Mr. Humphreys.
If the phaser fits, wear it.
Okay.
I'm not even sure if that's the right word.
Yeah.
Is phaser?
Yes.
Set phasers to sexy.
Uh-huh.
Something like that.
Okay, yeah.
So this is it's a busy week in the world, unfortunately, in the world of serial killers, but maybe fortunately. I know some people were not happy with the fact that Joseph James DeAngelo appeared in court on Monday, June 29th, to plead guilty, or I admit, to 13 murders, over 50 rapes, and 150 charges altogether over 4 decades of his monstrous work. But I found it cathartic, and I made sure I didn't have much to do on Monday, and I watched a large portion of the proceedings. I was grateful that there were breaks, because I found myself at points that were surprising, but, you know, at certain points I was sobbing. And I heard from 3 beautiful friends across the country, in different parts of the country, Indiana, Wisconsin, and Northern California. And they all 3 said, I'm just sobbing watching this. And I thought, okay, good. You know, not good that they're sobbing, but good that I'm not alone, that, you know, other women, people watching it and sobbing. And, you know, none of us are intimately familiar with him or even with the victims, other than the fact that what we've seen over the years. And it was just a big day. And I know some people are upset that he didn't have to technically allocute, but I feel like the fact that each DA from 8 different counties got up to read the factual information of what happened and what he did. And they pulled no punches. They took these opportunities to really go over as much, I mean, because it's so voluminous, everything that he did, but to go over what he did in excruciating detail and have him say, as the judge says, do you understand these charges as they are brought before you, and you are mentally able to give your answer, and how do you plead? Guilty. And he at first stood, it was, I probably the time that I laughed and pretty heartily was at the very beginning, when they brought him in with his public defenders and the judge. the judge comes in and the bailiff says, all rise, and they have to kind of help him to his feet. They had to kind of help him, walk with a cane, and he's shackled, and he sits down. Pretty much the second they get him seated, that's when the judge comes in and they have to make him stand, and he struggles to stand, and he's, behaving like he doesn't know where he is. And
oh man, that's just...
Yeah, but the funny part was that then you could see the look on his face. He was like... As soon as he sat down, they made him stand. And he may be, struggling to stand because he's on some sort of hunger strike. And there is a theory that he won't make it until August to his sentencing. But, we pretty much know how that's going to go. So the next time after a break, when they brought him back in, for the rest of the day, he was in a wheelchair, which I don't even think he should have gotten. I don't think he should have got anything to make his movement or his experience any easier. I just feel like they should have just drug him, by his shackles. If he couldn't walk, should just drug him until he threw on the carpeting, giving him some rug burns. And anyway, that's just my own personal, and I
probably not allowed.
No, not allowed. I know, but Michael Bowman, the judge, I think did a fantastic job. Even his very professional court-appointed attorneys did a great job, and the DAs from all 8 counties, just spectacular. I think it was Todd Spitzer that wouldn't look at the judge and just looked at Joseph James D'Angelo as he read every piece of information. That's
very cool.
It was, I think I expected a female to do that, but the fact that a male did that, I felt was extraordinary and much appreciated. And I never want to come down on gender sides, but people mentioning to me that, actually Jennifer Carroll mentioning that the person that directed the wonderful adaptation of I'll Be Gone in the Dark for HBO is a woman, and I had not thought about that. And even producer Mark is more sensitive to those things than I am, and explained why, it's important that a woman tell a story. I'm like one of those equal opportunity employers. Like, I feel like the best person for the job should get the job. It doesn't matter your gender or your race or your religion or anything like that, whoever does the best job. But I'm grateful that Liz Garbus was considered to be the person to do the best job for that docuseries, because it is so remarkably well done. And this is, I will tell you in all honesty, I feel like this series could go on for another 3 or 4 episodes, but I will just, in all honesty, I just need to be done. I don't typically take these things this hard. I mean, I can, and I have, and I get over them, but I can't talk about a serial killer anymore for a while. I can't. Derrick Todd Lee was such an interesting case because of the unique things he did and how he was able to do what he did for so long. And now this case, which is parallel, they were operating at the same time, and we'll find out that Sean Gillis had a file on his computer labeled Derrick Todd Lee. He was following his competition.
Oh my God.
So I can't. Sean Gillis's case is just as interesting in different ways. He and Derrick Todd Lee had such different ways of doing what they did, different victims, different MOs, but yet the same monstrous, horrible behavior. And I can't talk about it. This is going to be the last episode of the Baton Rouge Serial Killers, which their names are just a throwaway. Derrick Todd Lee being the Baton Rouge serial killer, and Sean Gillis being arrested a year after Derrick Todd Lee. And basically because of Derrick Todd Lee, I believe that's why Sean Gillis was, eventually arrested, because his DNA, the DNA he left, didn't match the victims. They thought it was all Derrick Todd Lee until they found other things. And honestly, if they hadn't narrowed in on Sean Gillis, we wouldn't have found out about the additional 5 people he murdered over the years. But I can't extend it anymore. I can't talk about this anymore because I can't. I'm done. I'm full.
It's kind of like you're serial killered out.
I am. And I never thought I'd say that. I really never thought I would say that. Especially, I feel like, this is the topper that's just really, it's getting me. And it's so small and not related, and yet it makes a big difference to me. I pre-ordered James Huddle's book, Killers Keep Secrets. James Huddle is Joseph James D'Angelo's brother-in-law. He is his ex-wife Sharon Huddle's brother, and he's a photographer. And he knew Joseph James D'Angelo for 40-something years, and most of their adult lives, and raised their kids together, etc. Even had a conversation about, hey, do you think they're ever going to find that East Area rapist guy? Joseph James D'Angelo is asking his brother-in-law, hey, do you think they're ever going to find me? Which,
that's not creepy at all.
Not at all. But my book arrived from Amazon. It arrived earlier than I thought it was going to, because they said, it was a pre-order and it, wasn't released yet. And the envelope outside, padded envelope from Amazon, looked great. And I opened it up, and the cover is spattered with a burgundy brown sticky material. Now, the first thing I thought was, is this blood? Is this like something they thought was interesting? Because the cover is fairly rustic. Pictures of Joseph James D'Angelo, and there's some black bars over people's eyes, I guess, to protect their innocence. But I was like, this is awful. So I immediately, write Amazon, and I'm like, look, I've ordered this book a while ago, and I was grateful you sent it to me a little early, but it's covered in something disgusting, and I can't even open it and read it. So maybe that's God's way.
Wow, it
was weird. Yeah, I know. And I'm sending it back, and they're sending me another one, but I obviously won't get to read it as soon as I thought I was going to. And maybe that's a gift. Maybe it was the universe protecting me. Don't read this now. You're overloaded on serial killer stuff.
Maybe we wait a while now before we go back to another serial
I think
killer.
that's what I'm trying to say, is that this episode about Sean Vincent Gillis is going to be the last serial killer for a while, until I can build my strength back up. And we have an episode next week, which is, believe it or not, lighthearted. It's a lighthearted episode about the Grand Theft Auto business, and a retired NYPD officer, and his book about the Grand Theft Auto division. So this is going to be heavy, and then we're going to lighten it up, and then we'll move on from there, covering some cases that you beautiful tipsters have sent us. And speaking of that, please know you can always email us at jttipsters@gmail.com. You can call us on our tipster hotline, 832-847-7837. You can find us on all the social medias, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Those are the only ones I don't do a lot of the other ones. I'm really sorry. I have no interest in a TikTok video. TikTok is an annoying sound the clock makes. I don't really care to do anything else with that, you kids and all your videos.
Well, we may be forced at some point, but I don't want to do it now.
Oh yeah, I'm not doing it now. So who knows? I never say never. The future may change, but that's not my jam right now. I got too much on my plate already. And speaking of that, if you would like to subscribe to this podcast, we'd be very grateful in whatever streaming service you use. And if you could take the time to give us a review, if you have the time to write a review, and if you don't, give us a 5-star rating. If you don't like us, don't rate us. I'm just tired at this point, so I'm just like, hey, could you give us a review? The reviews mean the world to us. We know what you like, and in some instances, what you don't like. But we are grateful for anyone who takes the time to let us know. And apparently that's how people find us. And we're also grateful that people have found us, and we want more people to find us. So this is the final episode of under the umbrella of the Baton Rouge Serial Killers. I do not like the Baton Rouge Serial Killer name. It doesn't tell you about the horror. So I accidentally dubbed Derrick Todd Lee the key collector. That was his trophy. Sean Gillis, I'm going to dub the limb collector. And that's just me. You don't have to call him that, but I think you'll understand why. There is great coverage of all of the Baton Rouge serial killers, and believe me, there are more than we know. Than these two, there are more. Great coverage in their local publication called The Advocate. Really great coverage. I mean, I'm always so impressed when journalists do the really hard work and make sure there are no mistakes, and the insight that journalists, some journalists are poetic. And, just as an example, the Hal Arthur case here in Southern California, I'm reading an LA Times, crime column and thinking, this is beautifully written. And then I see the byline is Michael Conley. So, sometimes journalists go on to become, true crime writers or fictional crime writers, and their poetry in their writing is seen. And some of the journalists for The Advocate are just spectacular. There's one journalist for a sort of an offbeat publication named Susan Mustafa, who has done great work also. She's written several books on the serial killers of Baton Rouge. The one she wrote on Derrick Todd Lee with the prosecutor Tony Clayton is I've Been Watching You. That came out in 2006. And she wrote one in 2011 about Sean Vincent Gillis called Dismembered. And that's why I'm calling him the limb collector, as you'll find out. There is also another book I wanted to mention by an author named Ethan Brown that came out in 2017. And between 2005 and 2009, 8 women of the Jefferson Davis Parish in Jennings, Louisiana, were found in different canals and crawfish ponds. And he has a book called Murder in the Bayou, Who Killed the Jeff Davis 8. And these women were more along the lines of what Sean Gillis did, as opposed to Derrick Todd Lee, who just had the cockiness to walk into your home or push his way into your home. These women were really on the fringes of society. They were all sex workers who worked out of one sort of rundown motel called the Boudreaux Inn. They were women who had documented mental illnesses. Again, they were sex workers who were there because they had no place else to go. They had left abusive relationships. They were just completely impoverished women, on the fringes of society. So, and we don't know who killed those women yet. So there are definitely more serial killers in South Louisiana than any of us can ever imagine. So Sean Vincent Gillis is somewhat different in that, definitely different than Derrick Todd Lee, and that he started later. And, a lot of serial killers start in their early to mid 20s. He had a similarity to Derrick Todd Lee in that he killed across race lines. Most serial killers stick to their own race. Derrick Todd Lee killed white brunette women and one beautiful mixed race black woman. And Sean Vincent Gillis also killed 8 women. We know that Derrick Todd Lee killed more women because we just don't know all of his victims. We, in the interview last week with our beloved Chief David McDavid, he is convinced that Derrick Todd Lee had other victims that he took to his grave. We don't know. Another thing about Sean Gillis that's different, he's chatty. He will tell you, he'll talk and talk and talk and talk. And he did. He did. We wouldn't have known about a lot of his victims if he hadn't talked.
Isn't that the norm? Isn't that what made Derrick Todd Lee a little odd?
Absolutely. One of the things, yes, that made him very different is that he spoke to no one. Typically, serial killers or killers in general, let's just say it's one person, you've killed one person in your life because of a heated argument. You, 10 years later, are going to be sitting in a bar, talking to someone and say, I accidentally killed my brother-in-law with a, fireplace poker because he pissed me off. That happens. And Derrick Todd Lee told no one. They, in the interview last week, Chief McDavid mentioned they let one of his friends out of prison early. And yet, even though his friend thought he would get him to talk, it never happened. And even in prison, they tried to see if he would speak to any of the other inmates or the wardens about anything, even a slip, nothing. And then he dies fairly young, at the age of 47, of heart failure. But I am sorry that he took his secrets to his grave. That's not the first time that has happened, but it's definitely, it's a shame. So I guess we can say there's some sort of gratitude that Joseph James D'Angelo at least had to say guilty and I admit to things that were on his list of horrors.
Yeah, to me, it just was like a huge weight was lifted off of all these years of mystery and supposition and guessing, and he just said, yep.
Yeah, I did it. I think of all the things, it's the Brian and Katie Majori case and the Claude Snelling murder and Beth Snelling, his daughter, being there. Those are the cases, because we had him tied to the other cases by his DNA, but Katie and Brian Majori and Claude Snelling, other than the fact that he had Pat Mono's gun, I mean, he was tied to them anyway, but just to hear him say guilty, and I admit, that was, yeah. So in a different way, Sean Gillis has some patterns of a serial killer. He was fascinated with necrophilia from a very young age. He told a profiler, maybe from the age of 10 and under, that he thought that this profiler said, they always go back to the mother. It's always like, did you have a odd relationship with your mother or whatever? And he said, she was not an unattractive woman. And the profiler said, did you ever think about having sex with your mother? And he said, oh yeah, sure. I fully imagined that if she died, you guys would come in and find me in bed with her.
Okay.
So he only wanted to have sex with his mother after she died. So he was referred to by his mother as her little blue-eyed angel. And this is the person I loved most in the world, which, I guess if you're a mother, that's what you should say, right? And he did have very striking blue eyes. He occasionally took pictures of himself where his eyes are open very big and wide, and they're a little creepy, but they are a very beautiful blue. He's still alive, by the way. He's like 58. He lives in like it's a condo. It is a gated community, according to John Grobman.
And there's a security code to get in.
You have to get a lot of security codes, I'm guessing. He's in the Louisiana State Penitentiary, which I guess that's Angola, which I don't know. Anyway, hopefully no air conditioning. In the words of our beloved Chief McDavid, no air conditioning in South Louisiana. That's where you need to be if you're a serial killer. He is one of the only serial killers I've ever heard, whether it's true or not, whether he means it, express some sort of remorse. I don't know if it's surface or how it works, but so Sean Gillis is kind of this knock-around guy, average kid, average grades, a little quiet. As he got a little older, neighbors, would report odd things. Nothing they had to report to the police, but at 3 a.m., I was like awakened and I didn't know what was going on. And, Sean Gillis is in his front yard banging loudly on garbage cans. He seemed to be a night owl and would maybe sleep during the day and prowl at night, which is, we find out later, he has the opportunity to do so. But he, at one point he would lay on his front lawn and howl at the moon.
Okay, well, sure.
Yeah.
I do that every other night.
You smear some lamb's blood on your boobs, and I mean, you don't have boobs, but
that's pigeon's blood.
Pigeon's blood, because you can't catch a lamb, but you can catch a pigeon. Pigeon blood on your boobs. He would also lay in the front yard and scream at his mother, yelling insults at his mother while in the middle of the night while lying on the front yard. So they shared this home. Like Derrick Todd Lee, his father abandoned them pretty early. So it was just the two of them. And his mom owned this little ranch house in South Louisiana. And eventually she moves to Atlanta. Another connection, like Derrick Todd Lee had fled to Atlanta. So his mom is in Atlanta. He's living in this little ranch house. And he starts late in life. Was in his early 30s. And his first murder, a little bit like Derrick Todd Lee, he broke into a upscale retirement community in the middle of the night and raped and murdered 81-year-old Ann Bryan. Beautiful woman. Now 81. And her murder goes unsolved for 10 years until he's arrested, and they would never have known it was him until he told them. he is convicted on a few of his later ones, but we'll get to that. So he kills Anne Bryan March 21st of 1994, breaking into her home, choked her, stabbed her, and stabbed her, I think it was 80 times.
Oh, for Christ's sake.
Yeah. Pretty bad. Again, Derrick Todd Lee had stabbed one of his victims 80 times. So that's interesting. But that was at the same time they didn't know each other. He wasn't trying to be a copycat at this point. Now, the odd thing about him is he had an extended cooling off period. He didn't kill again for 5 years. And do you know why? He was working as a convenience store clerk in the convenience store across the street from Anne Bryan's home. Oh. So he could look at the home of the woman that he killed every day that he went to work.
Oh, my God.
And that was enough for him to relive his fantasies.
That's just so fucking creepy.
Isn't that great? So he ends up meeting a woman introduced by friends. Her name is Terry Lemoyne. And his girlfriend for 9 years, who ends up still living in his home, in the home that when you hear what happened. And the car that she bought him, that he hunted in, is in their backyard. And you'll find out why she feels like she can't get rid of it. Not for sentimental reasons, but for biohazard reasons. So he moves on. I know. Now the rest of the victims are, other than one, are mostly sex workers. He picked up sex workers constantly, and yet when he had his girlfriend, Terry Lemoyne, they were never intimate. They lived together for 9 years, slept in the same bed, and he called her Honey Bunny, but they never had sex. She said that he told her it was dirty. For all outside purposes, they looked like a normal couple. There are pictures of them at Christmas where she's behind him with her arms around his neck. He's smiling. They were introduced by a common friend because they were both Star Trek fans. He had a uniform, a Star Trek uniform.
All right, that right there is a tip-off. Sorry.
But most Star Trek fans are not serial killers.
I understand that, but it's a tip-off to something.
Well, I think the fact that you live together for 9 years and sleep in the same bed but don't have sex is another tip-off. And when you broach the subject, your significant other says sex is dirty, that's a really big tip-off. But she said he always treated her, respectfully and politely. And I'm like, okay. And he's not an unattractive man. He's, a little weird and creepy looking and has a 1970s porn star mustache and glasses. But he does have, beautiful blue eyes and, average height, 5'8", average build. There's nothing that stood out about him except for maybe the fact that he gave, neighbor girls and women the willies. He just was like, just like an odd dude. And from the outside, it looked like he's just an odd dude. So I don't know what happened that he lost his job or quit his job, but his girlfriend is the only one working. And she works continually at the convenience store. And conveniently for him, she works the night shift.
So wait, she's working at the same convenience store that he worked at across the street from his first murder victim?
Yes.
Okay.
So he ends up being unemployed. I don't know when or how or why, but he's unemployed, but it gives him time to hunt. So he has this 5-year cooling off period at the time that Derrick Todd Lee is busy working. And he ends up, he drops his girlfriend off at night to work and then picks her up in the morning. And he can then spend the night hunting. Now he ends up telling investigators, the prostitutes loved me. The sex workers loved me. I don't think prostitute's a bad word, but the sex workers loved me. I treated them like ladies. Well, I'm sure the ones you let live loved you, but the ones that you murdered, I'm not sure it was...
They probably didn't have such a good opinion of you.
Yeah, I'm thinking that's probably what happened. I'm going to do this differently than Derrick Todd Lee. I'm going to give you the list of his victims up front here so we know what happened when and the time. So his second murder, 5 years later, January of 1999, Catherine Hall. His third murder, 4 months later, May of 1999, Hardy Schmidt, age 52. Joyce Williams, age 36, November of 1999, so 5 months after that. 2 months after Joyce is Lillian Robinson, age 52, January of 2000. He's picking up. October of 2000, Marilyn Nevels, age 38. Now, this is where he takes another turn. After the first 6, the last 2, he knew his 7th victim. And profilers will tell you that serial killers typically have no connection to their victims. He had known Johnny Mae Williams, who was 45. He murdered her in October of 2003. He had known her for 10 years, and she had cleaned his home. And when you find out what he did to her, he fully admitted what he did to her, and I can't even. At this point now, Derrick Todd Lee has been arrested, and the police and the press are calling him the Baton Rouge serial killer. And Sean Gillis is like, wait a minute, that's not my work. Someone else is doing this too. And so he has a file on his computer hard drive with Derrick Todd Lee's initials. And he starts collecting news articles and photos of Lee's case and following it. And profilers actually believe that he's like, oh no, I'm not going to be outdone by someone else.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Sean Gillis is, compiling a folder on his computer. He was much more technologically advanced than Derrick Todd Lee. He had a lot of incriminating evidence on his computer. Not only a file on Derrick Todd Lee, but stupidly had taken 45 pictures of Johnny Mae Williams dead in his trunk.
Oh my God.
Posed in different ways. His final victim is Donna Bennett Johnston. She was 43. She was a sex worker. And she was murdered February 26th of 2004. Now, besides Johnny Mae Williams, having known her, his next biggest fuck up was with Donna Bennett Johnston, because he violated his own rule of hunting before there's a big rain. If you know there's a big rain coming and you dispose of a body, it can wash away a lot of evidence. But apparently, he murdered Donna Bennett Johnston after a big rain and left her in a field where he left tire tracks.
Oh, there you go.
Unusual tire tracks. And once again, even the DA says the reason we caught him, because we had his DNA on the last 3 murders. We had his DNA, but he wasn't in the system. We didn't have anything to match it to. Even the DA said the tire tracks were found by an investigator who employed good old-fashioned gumshoe police work and wouldn't let it go. So there's a field that Donna Bennett Johnson is found in that has a fence around it and an opening that you can drive through. There were multiple tire tracks, but for some reason, this one set of tire tracks was captivating to this officer, and he wouldn't let it go. He photographed it, a large amount of photographs. He took tire impressions. He did the research. He did the footwork and found out that these tires had stopped being manufactured in 2003, and there were only 90 of them sold in the area.
Ooh, all right.
And they ran it down. They thought he was on the short list, and they brought him in for a simple friendly chat, is the way they described it. And he's sitting in the room, and they get up and leave, and he's they've said, we've got some, they already knew they had the DNA on the 3 women, but they didn't know all that he had done. But they are waiting for, the results of the DNA test, and they're questioning him just to see what he'll say. And he's friendly and open and chatty and volunteers information. Oh, Johnny Mae Williams, we knew each other. I mean, she cleaned my house. You might find one of her hairs in my car.
Oh, yeah, okay.
You might.
Oh, boy.
He also offhandedly mentions that there would be some blood in the car because his girlfriend, Terry, had started her period one day while riding in his car.
Okay. What?
But wait.
Oh, my God.
It gets better. They say, is there any reason why it would be in the back seat? And he says, no, there wouldn't be any reason why it was in the back seat. But I mean, it went all over. I mean, if the windows were down, some of it may have blown into the back seat, because most women know when you start your period, it just,
yeah.
I mean,
yeah, it's just, I can't tell you the number of times I've been walking down the street and there's been 3 or 4 women menstruating and I just get socked with flying menstrual fluid.
I think it's really polite of you to not even mention it.
Oh, no.
You're just...
All the people around me, we're just used to it.
You're used to getting struck with menstrual blood?
It's just, politeness,
Yeah. It's one of those things you learn when you go through puberty.
Yeah.
Women are going to bleed to the point where it flies out the window. I mean, I don't know how many times I've had to buy a new car.
Right.
Because you get tired of replacing the seats.
It's just one of those rules, like, it's not cool to go up to a celebrity when he's having dinner to ask for his autograph. And it's just really not cool to point out to a woman that her menstrual fluid is flying all over your new suit.
Yeah. See? You live in a very polite world.
Yes.
I don't know what world it is, but it's very polite. So that was kind of a tip-off that maybe he wasn't as smart as he liked to think he was. Because, scientifically, menstrual blood flying out a window is going to be difficult unless Terry had her ass hanging out the window and
well that's very
had no
common
pants
too,
on.
from what I understand.
Yeah, and was a tampon's unavailable, and she's just.
We shouldn't laugh about
I know.
it.
I'm sorry. It's your fault for making me laugh. Now, they have checked out his car to a certain extent, which is a white Chevy Cavalier, which, by the way, his girlfriend Terry Lemoyne purchased for him, which the police wanted her to know this is the car he used to hunt his victims, and this is the car he transported some of them and kept them in. And she, at first, does not believe, of course, that the man she's lived with for 9 years could ever do something this bad, until she remembers the one day that Sean picks her up early in the morning after her shift at work, and the car smells really bad. And she says, "What is that?" And he said, "Oh, I hit a dead animal." And the next day, he's, voraciously cleaning the car. But that was Johnny Mae Williams in the trunk, is what the smell was. The woman that he had employed to clean his home, that he had known for 10 years, longer than he'd known his girlfriend. He had killed her and had done something even worse. He had cut off her hand and given her a manicure.
Oh, Jesus.
So this is why I call him the limb collector. That's just what I'm going to call him. So while he's in being interviewed, and these hours of interviews cannot be used in court, but you'll find out that there was a amazing workaround that happened from Donna Bennett Johnston's friend. What a smart girl. She really helped wrap this case up, because while he's in the interview room and he is alone, and this is all being videotaped, he says, "So much for the easy, friendly chat. I guess I should really call a lawyer." And I guess they either didn't hear it, ignored it, or because he didn't say it to one of the officers, they let it go. And they came back in and questioned him for many more hours. And then he's arrested on April 29th of 2004. And when he's arrested, he then says, oh, yeah, Catherine Hall, yeah, Johnny Mae Williams, sure. Donna Bennett Johnston, you're right. By the way, Anne Bryan, Hardy Schmidt, Joyce Williams, Lillian Robinson, and Marilyn Nevels.
Oh.
And they had no idea. No idea. I have to say the investigator was like, some of the names he gave us of these unsolved cases just knocked me out. I would have had no idea that these names were at all related to him. So when they look at Sean and they see that he has the most minimal of rap sheet, not at all like Derrick Todd Lee. He had, a DUI, traffic citations, possession of marijuana, blah, blah, blah. So he is, arrested and he's just wanting to talk to anyone. And they send this FBI profiler in and he says, I began killing because of stress.
Of course he did.
What? Right. So he breaks into 81-year-old Anne Bryan's home and, he wanted to rape her, but he got scared because she screamed. So he slits her throat and stabs her. I said 80 times. It was 50 times. I apologize. Slits her throat and stabs her 50 times and leaves her body in her upscale, exclusive retirement home in St. James Place. And then he doesn't, kill again for 5 years because he can see her house every day at work. The weird thing about his second, all of it's weird, right? But the weird thing about his second murder was the stalking. 52-year-old Hardy Schmidt was a jogger. She'd actually competed in the Boston Marathon. And she would get up very early before work and run. So it's 5:30 a.m. on May 30th of 1999. And she's jogging. And he follows her for 3 weeks. He watches her jog early in the morning, probably before he drops off Terry for work at the convenience store. And he finally, he's, I don't want to say he's perfecting his horrible work, but he breaks into Anne Bryan's home and wants to rape her. And when she screams, he slits her throat. He goes 5 years before finding another victim who's 52 years old and he's in his, 30s. And he hits her with his car as she's jogging. He stuns her and knocks her into a ditch. And then he gets out and puts a zip tie around her neck and forces her into the car. And then he drives to a park where he rapes her and kills her and then puts her body in the back of his Chevy Cavalier and then dumps her 2 days later.
So is that typical? He keeps the bodies in the trunk for a while?
Well, I think it was only 2 people. I think it was Hardy and Johnny Mae Williams that he actually took time to keep, because then I'm just going to have to say, he perfects his monsterhood a little more. He realizes he can't keep the bodies with him, so he takes parts of them to keep.
Ugh.
He has a thing for legs. He poses. He's become more bold. He poses the bodies in terrible ways. He cuts off parts of the bodies to take with him. He cuts off breasts, nipples. He will take, yeah, I know. He takes off tattoos, cuts tattoos off, takes them with him, keeps them in the freezer. I don't know how Terry didn't find them. Maybe he labeled them, Hungry Man dinners or something.
Oh, forgot. He kept them in his freezer at home?
Mm-hmm. Oh, but wait. Oh, Mark. I don't know how this ex-girlfriend lives in the home, because when you find out what he did in the home, and she has no attachment to it. She's like, it's just a building.
I don't know. I couldn't. I mean, I could not live in that
Right.
house. Did I understand you correctly to say she still has the car?
Yep, it's in the backyard.
Why didn't she just have it destroyed?
Well, she said, I tried to donate it, but they told me it's a biohazard because there'd been dead bodies in the trunk.
Well, I'm sure that's true. I'd still
Right.
get rid of it. You can
Wait,
send it to a
would you live in the
junkyard.
house?
I wouldn't live in the house. I wouldn't. Be
She
anywhere
tried
near
to
the
donate
car.
it and sell it twice. It's still there. It's still in the backyard.
God damn.
And she's still in the house where she had to replace the floors and a wall because he had dismembered people in their kitchen. And
Oh God.
and the when they came in to look at the home with a warrant, the entire subflooring in the kitchen was red with blood.
Oh.
He had taken, this is another really odd thing. I don't know how you would ever live in the home, let's just say that. But he had taken Donna Bennett Johnston. He's not a big man. He's 5'8". He picked small women that he could control. And for the most part, women who were, other than someone jogging or someone in a retirement home who were, sex workers. And Donna Bennett Johnston had been a sex worker for many decades. She was 43. She was very beautiful. And he took her home, bathed her in his shower, held her up and bathed her.
After she was dead.
Bathed her in his shower, holding her dead body, and then cut off her left arm at the elbow and left her in a drainage canal near Louisiana State University and used her hand to masturbate himself.
Okay.
So we go back to the fact that he had asked for an attorney. So his confession tapes, literally, let's just call them that. They're not interviews, they're confessions. His confession tapes can't be used in court. He has a pretty good public defender who says, he asked for an attorney. You can't use these.
I was going to ask about that. Right. Yep.
So Donna Bennett Johnston has a lifelong friend. They'd been friends for 20 years. They were both sex workers. Tammy Purpura. Tammy writes Sean in prison. Hi, I'm Donna Bennett Johnston's best friend. I just wanted to know what happened. And as we know, Chatty Cathy loves the opportunity. And he starts off by saying, first of all, my sincere condolences to the loss of your friend.
Oh, for God's sake.
But, she was so drunk, it didn't take long. Her last sentence was, I can't breathe. Now, where have we heard that? He's strangling her with a zip tie. And he said it really only took about a minute and a half for her to succumb to unconsciousness and then death. And I can't tell you why I did the post-mortem dismemberment. I mean, there must be something really deep in my subconscious that needs that kind of macabre action.
Oh, I mean, you...
Right.
I don't have any words for this.
So Tammy Purpura is not doing well. She eventually dies in 2005. Some reports say cancer. Some reports say complications from AIDS. It could be cancer from AIDS. I mean, I don't know, and I can't find I hear 4 different things, 2 saying AIDS and 2 saying cancer. But all I'm going to say is that she died in 2005, but not before one of the last things she does is show up in court and hand the DA all of her letters.
Oh, she showed up in court.
Yep.
Wow.
Hands the DA an envelope. Here are letters between Sean Gillis and I.
Well, now those are admissible, I would think.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
They are, counselor. So having a friend who is with you to the end, to when you both die in such terrible ways, but having a friend who comes forward with the proof needed because, our legal system, if you've asked for an attorney and they're still talking to you, none of that can be used, right? All of those things play into the fact that they get Sean Gillis at first a second-degree murder charge, but then his last two are first-degree murder charges because of Tammy Purpura. We all need a friend like Tammy, and we all need
no kidding.
An investigator like the one who will not give up on these unusual tires. He will not give up on them. So he's first arrested for the murders of Catherine Hall, Johnny Mae Williams, and Donna Bennett, and then he's eventually found guilty of 4 others. There's still one that's outstanding. It's Lillian's murder, even though we know he did it. I guess everything has to go through the right channels. After the first discussion in the interview room, just the easygoing meet and greet where they just want to have a nice conversation, the lieutenant realizes he needs to get a search warrant for his home right away, and he does. And when Sean Gillis is eventually arrested in 2004, he's wearing a Star Trek belt buckle.
Of course he is.
When he is arrested, they're in bed, Terry and Sean, and they knock on the door and arrest him at their home. And she says, what is this for? And they say, we have his DNA in 3 murders and we believe he's a serial killer. And she says, oh no, you have the wrong man.
Now wait a minute. He's in his Star Trek, he's wearing a Star Trek belt at this time?
A belt buckle.
A belt buckle in bed.
Mm-hmm. I'm guessing it's the middle of the day because Terry worked overnight.
Oh, I see.
And they may have just laid down in their clothes or something.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Because she slept during the day because she worked overnight where he could go hunting, and he's wearing a Star Trek belt buckle. And when they, bust in and arrest him, she's like, what is this all about? And Sean says, sorry, honey bunny. Oh. That's all he says at the time. His entire explanation to her is, sorry, honey bunny. Oh. And she is flabbergasted when they say he's murdered 3 women. She's like, well, that couldn't happen. So she's allowed to visit him in jail. And she said there's, glass between them. And she picks up the phone and says, Sean, are any of the things that these people are saying you did true? And she does an impression of him of ducking his head down to the left and kind of looking around. And then he looks up and says, yeah, sorry, honey bunny.
Okay. And she still lives in the same house. That she shared with this guy.
He dismembered victims in their kitchen, showered a dead woman in their shower, kept their limbs in the freezer, and his car is in the backyard where the trunk had been used to secrete bodies.
Well, there's something wrong with Terry. I
sorry. Think so too, but she literally comes across as someone who's like, I've moved beyond this.
Well, yeah, I guess so. But that's not normal.
No, it isn't. And when a reporter asked, where did he dismember these women? And she's like, in the kitchen. And the reporter says, we're in the kitchen. And she says, yeah, right here. And they stand up and she shows in the area where they had taken the floor up. And the reporter says, did you replace anything? And she said, oh yeah, the flooring's all been replaced and part of a wall.
Okay.
And then
I guess I shouldn't judge, but
why not? When asked, do you ever feel any bad feelings here? Do you ever feel any, and she says, no, it's just a building. And she said, since then, so many good things have happened here. Okay, lady.
Okay.
Either it's a way to cope or, she really is the most zen human being. It's just a building that has the blood of victims and the flooring that they can't get it out.
Right.
Right. He's, a 58-year-old monster who spent 15 years terrorizing women in South Louisiana and doing things that most of us can't imagine. And I have to say, of all of the monsterhood that he did, the fact that he's willing to talk and quite frankly, the things that he says turn out to be true. The one thing he said, and this is video and audio taped during an interview, he says, if anything of this useless life of mine comes out, help the little girls of today not to be the corpses of tomorrow. He says that as an investigator is turning around and walking out the door of the interrogation room. Help the little girls of today not to be the corpses of tomorrow. I don't know if that's a sign of remorse or if it's just extreme narcissism, like I did all of this and you guys didn't stop me until now. So now it's your job to make sure people like me don't do this again. And one last footnote in this serial killer from South Louisiana series is that, as I discussed with Chief McDavid last week, Derrick Todd Lee's son, Derrick Lee, with his common law wife, girlfriend Cassandra, was arrested in 2019 for the murder of his best friend, Valente Brooks. Now, Derrick and Valente were in Valente's bedroom, and Derrick said they were filming a rap video and were playing with a gun. And the gun went off accidentally, and Valente was shot in the chest. Now, I don't know, because he hasn't come to trial yet, I don't know. I know what he's charged with. It started at second degree and they moved it up to first degree, but I don't know, because this is still so new, 2019, I don't know how it's really going to turn out. Derrick expressed remorse. Derrick called the police, and it was considered an accidental death. They thought that Valente had shot himself accidentally. He was found with the gun underneath him on top of his bed. Now, Derrick mentioned to family members, extended family members, also family members of Derrick Todd Lee, he said, I feel so responsible for my friend's death. He told investigators this as they were, taking Valente's body out of the house. They said he's appeared to be very upset. He kept saying, it's my fault, it's my fault. So after a few days, Derrick's family members said, you need to go to the police and tell the truth. So he went to the police and told the truth. I don't know what the truth is, but they arrested him on second-degree murder charges and then bumped it up to first. So I don't know exactly. He looks remorseful. His booking photo, he looks remorseful and sad. He's a 19-year-old kid. He's a 19-year-old kid of a serial killer, of one of South Louisiana's worst serial killers. So I don't want to say that it's familial, that it's genetic, that if one family member kills, you're going to be a killer too. We know that's not true because so many family members and children, siblings, parents of serial killers have no idea what a family member is doing or has done. But I guess I'm going to say, as awful as it sounds, Sean Gillis saying, if anything of this useless life of mine comes out, help the little girls of today not to be the corpses of tomorrow. And I think that's what we all have to do. protect our girls. And more cowbell.
If you'd like to support this podcast, go to patreon.com/just the Tip-Sters.